still at the World Economic Forum, which is winding down in the region as we go into the final full day of discussion. One of the eminent session contributors at the summit was Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. She is an economist and international development expert who served under the leadership of President Olusegun Obasanjo and President Goodluck Jonathan, respectively. She sits on the board of Standard Chartered Bank, Twitter, Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization, or Gavi, and the African Risk Capacity. Dr. Ngozi, on behalf of Gavi, has helped immunize more than 760 million children and saved 13 million lives since the year 2000. We welcome you, Mrs. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, for joining us all the way from Davos. Good to have you with us. Welcome, and congratulations on your recent award from this day to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the newspaper. Do you ever look back at your stint twice as finance minister, wondering, is there something that could have been done differently with benefit from hindsight?
Well, thank you so much. First of all, I'm very grateful for the award. I'm very humbled, and I thank Nigerian people for choosing me and this day for the award. Yes, of course, there are always things that one would have done differently. You know, not everything went perfectly. I think I would have spent even more time trying to explain policies to people, because I believe that when Nigerian people know that a policy or policies are serving them, they will come behind in support. I think a lot of people are seeing the good work that was done under both the administrations I serve now. But it's as if they, you know, in retrospect, they are seeing that this was good work. Perhaps if we had spent much more time explaining to them. I thought I spent quite a bit of time, including in the States, but more could have been done. That's one. I think the second thing would have been to lock a few more things back down in legislation than we did, you know, to make sure that, you know, they stay and they work for the good of the country. But beyond that, I'm just grateful to Nigerians. They have been so loving and so supportive of me. So thank you.
Indeed, Doctor. Now, looking at the Davos summit, and you're not new to Davos, would you say this is different in being more action-oriented compared to others you have participated in the past?
Well, let me say that, you know, generally, globally, there's a bit of pessimism and uncertainty and worry in the air, you know, and so, of course, you sense some of that here at Davos. But you also sense the need to act. I mean, the theme and the focus of a lot of what is going on has to do with the sustainable development goals that the world has agreed on, and of course some of the vital elements of that, like climate change. And there I see a lot of you know, coming together and a lot of willingness to act on the part of the top CEOs who are here. Many of them are making pledges on sustainability, on what they will do to get to zero carbon emissions by 2050, on how they will align their businesses so it's not only about profit, but it actually cares about people and delivering for people. So I see that, and I see that as a positive sign. I think what we need to do, absolutely, for us in developing countries, in Nigeria and other Africa, is to harness that, to make sure that this wave means that they invest in our countries and that they help us create jobs. Because what we are really concerned about is how do we create jobs and employment for our youth. So if people are concerned here, let them invest in us.
Indeed, and hopefully these pledges will translate to reality. Now, many say the Gavi model provides a template or standard in public-private sector partnerships that accelerate progress in basic healthcare for the vulnerable, especially in developing economies. Can you tell us more about this model?
I think Gavi is a success story, and that is why I'm so proud to be chair of the board. Everybody here is talking about it because this is the 20th anniversary, and it's one of those stories that everyone, our countries, the developing countries, African countries, the developed, we can all claim a success, as well as the private sector and civil society, because Gavi works in a partnership. It believes that you cannot deliver the access to affordable vaccines for children in developing countries unless you partner with the private sector so that vaccines can be made more affordable and also so that you can innovate in the supply chain. You cannot succeed unless the developing countries themselves take charge of their destiny eventually. Gavi wants to work itself out of a job, and we've graduated 15 countries and 10 on the way, so they're also part of it. And the other part is raising the resources. So right now, Gavi has immunized 760 million children since inception 20 years ago, and it has saved 13 million lives. 64% of Gavi's resources are spent in Africa. So it's really working for our country. We are trying to raise $7.4 billion for the next 5 years, and I'm very happy to say we are getting a lot of support and success.
Very good. Now, many observers have said Nigeria needs faster per capita economic growth for over 7% to dent poverty and the sufferings of millions. Can you comment on this? And is this a problem of population control or more of gaps in the economic and fiscal policy space?
Well, you know that as a former finance minister, I'm no longer there, so I try to enjoy the work I'm doing elsewhere globally. But so I don't comment too much, but I think we can say that we need to step up on the continent of Africa as a whole, but also in our country, Nigeria, because Nigeria, South Africa, and Angola are more than 50% of sub-Saharan Africa's GDP. And therefore, you know, they bear a very big burden of responsibility that they have to grow and perform, not just for themselves, but to carry along the rest of the continent. But luckily, we have some good examples on the continent. We've got 8 countries that are among the 15 fastest growing in the world. We've got Ethiopia, Rwanda, Senegal, we've got Ghana, we've got Cote d'Ivoire, Tanzania, to name a few. And it shows that if we do the right policies and push on some reforms, we can indeed grow. So I think Nigeria has the potential to do that. It's not only about population control, it's about, you know, exploiting the potential that we have in the many sectors in the economy, and then, you know, trying to grow faster. No matter what we do, we have to grow. If we do not grow at a faster pace, we will continue to accumulate, you know, larger numbers of poor people, because right now we're experiencing negative per capita growth, and we need to turn that around and have positive growth. So we should just work harder and make sure we do it, because it's good for our young people and it's good for the whole continent.
Indeed it is. Now, drawing from your experience as a former finance minister, does Nigeria have a debt problem or a revenue problem or both? And what is your view on the pace of growth of debt in recent years, which some have described as alarming?
Now, let me get back to the issue of growth for a moment. You know, I've always said, even when I was finance minister, that growth is not sufficient. So I'm not trying to imply that if you're just growing, that solves all the problem. You have to grow, have what you call quality growth, which is what we were trying to push when I was in government. That is growing in those sectors that create jobs. So we have to do more in agriculture. We have to do more in services. Those areas that, you know, even the creative industries employ a lot of young people. We have to focus on technology. Our young people are really, really very clever at, you know, trying to, you know, create jobs for themselves, you know, support entrepreneurship like many of our philanthropists are doing. So it is growing in quality sectors. With respect to revenue, I think we need to absolutely do more. When we were in government, we recognized we had to push harder to improve our revenue, and we tried to do that. So Nigeria has to work hard to increase revenue, just like many other countries. We started to do it. I think we have to continue to do that.
Indeed, we will continue.
Yeah.
All right. Now, if you can hear me, China and India are said to have made significant progress in the eradication of poverty in recent years, while in Nigeria, poverty has increased and is gaining even more traction. So many Nigerians are worried. What did China and India do to succeed in this most critical war? And why can't Nigeria emulate that which we have seen to work?
Well, it comes back to the China is just phenomenal in terms of eradicating poverty, and India has now done so well. So most of the poverty problem has shifted to our continent. I think it goes back to the things that we said. You have to invest in those things that help to create jobs. You also have to invest in human development, meaning, there are three things, that we have to do. Invest in our physical infrastructure, invest in our human infrastructure, in education and health. But education has to be the type of skills that are needed to make people think about creating jobs for themselves and for others, not just the type of skills that make people look for jobs. Those days when you're looking for other people to create jobs are gone. If you go to China, the level of entrepreneurship is also very, very high. And they invested a lot in education of the right type and quality so that, those two things combined make a huge difference. I think one aspect of what China did was invest heavily in infrastructure of all kinds, because once you lay that infrastructural platform for your industry and your small and medium enterprises, then that makes things much easier. So those are some of the things we need to do to concentrate on creating jobs, to drive increase in revenues harder, to watch. I think on our debt issue, we just need to make sure that we have the capacity to service. So it's not only debt to GDP ratio we have to watch, but revenue to GDP. And all these things that I'm saying apply to most of our countries on the African continent. So I'm always an optimist about my continent and about my country. But being an optimist means also that we have to work hard, because if we don't do those things that are necessary, we will not move. But I believe so much in our young people and their ability to move things. So I'm looking to them.
Indeed, interesting perspective, Doctor. Now, finally and briefly, please, in your book, you wrote of your many battles against corruption. What is your advice to many Nigerians in public office facing resistance as a result of a corrupt ecosystem?
Far be it from me to say I'm the fountain of wisdom. I captured my experience of what I went through, and it was a pretty traumatic time, and it didn't just stop while I was in office. It continued even after, but we thank God that with persistence and, trying to show young people, look, the whole thing, my message is not really for people in office, it's for our young people who are in trying to make their way and whom we depend on to lift the country to the next level. It's for them to know that you should have principles, that you should stick to doing the right thing, that values matter. And it doesn't mean because the person next to you may be doing the wrong thing, you should do that too. Stick to your values, have principles, lift your head up high. Know that you have brains. If you have brains, you don't need to be corrupt. And also know that if you want to fight, it doesn't mean you have to fight the whole world. Just be upright yourself and try to do the right thing. If every single one of our young people could do that for us, then we will have a movement in which people are saying we will be transparent, we will be more open, we will try to do the right thing, because that actually moves the country. Corruption does not serve the country in any way, shape or form. It takes away resources from doing development projects and doing the right things we should do. So it's not only for government to fight it, it's for the people. It's for all of us. And that was why when we were there, we tried to do the little that we could.
You're right, Madam. Value matters. Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, it's been an honor talking with you on Nigeria's issues and others as well. It's good to have you with us. And that's